Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our ASBB mentorship program. It's great to see you all here. Looking very forward to hearing what Joey has to say. And thank you so much, Richard, for organising this chat for us.
Yeah, thanks, Joey, for doing this. I thought it'd be good to get a bit of crossover between. Obviously, we see a lot of clients that complain of tinnitus. What do you say, tinnitus or tinnitus?
In Australia, we say tinnitus. I think the Americans say tinnitus.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, crossing over with someone who actually treats the tinnitus
Yeah.
versus us usually trying to help avoid the causes or potential causes. So it should be an interesting discussion, I think.
Oh, definitely. Great recommendation.
Mm.
I'll introduce you for everyone else here. Joey is the founder and director of Seeking Balance International, vestibular audiologist, registered senior yoga teacher, neuroplasticity therapist, and author. Joey offers a highly needed and refreshing perspective on healing for people living with chronic vertigo or tinnitus, we say in Australia. She's uniquely trained as a vestibular audiologist and neuroplasticity therapist. She takes a special interest in the recovery patterns of people with persistent dizziness, vertigo, and tinnitus, and uses an integrative medicine approach, which is absolutely amazing for us because we see a lot of people with this issue and we love that approach. So over to you, Joey.
Well, yeah, I'm really happy to make this a co-creative space. So feel free to ask me questions, pick my brain. I've got my book here. This is a great resource if you are working with people who have tinnitus or dizziness for that matter, because I really talk in detail, and I can break some of that down for you today, but I talk in detail about like what is tinnitus, what are these chronic, elusive, invisible symptoms that the medical world sort of like, we don't know what to do. And often the mainstream approaches will be trialing lots of testing and diagnosis, which is really timely and traumatic and expensive often. So clients kind of end up feeling quite deflated and helpless, hopeless, depressed, or freaked out. So you might be noticing that in some of your people that you're working with and houses that you're visiting. So it's a really tricky situation from the client's perspective. And then the medical world can be like trialing lots of chemical cocktails of medications, and no one really knows what anything's doing. It's literally experimental. So many people will come to me when nothing's worked, or they just simply they don't feel comfortable with medications, etc., and they want to see what holistically is possible. So tinnitus, and for that matter, the chronic vertigo and dizziness you may also see, they go hand in hand, and often people will have both. And so from the inner ear, we've got the cochlea and the vestibular system. It's collecting vibrations all day long, never stops. And those messages are traveling through the cochlear vestibular nerve, the 8th nerve, through the brainstem, midbrain, up into the cortices. And when we have the tinnitus sounds or the dizziness and vertigo sensations, which is a feeling of movement when you know you're not moving. So it's a mismatch, a sensory mismatch of what's expected versus what's being felt. The tinnitus is any kind of chronic sound that nobody else can hear. It's generated by the body. So the tinnitus is a neural pathway that somewhere along the line from the ear through the brainstem, midbrain, and up into the auditory cortex is looping, and the message keeps on going. So it's like the body and brain haven't figured out a reason to discontinue that neural pattern yet. So my job is really helping people understand what the tinnitus is from that neuroscience perspective, and then helping them look at their lives and how they're inhabiting their body, how they're relating to themselves, and looking at how they can actually use neuroplasticity to disengage that tinnitus signal. So that's kind of in a nutshell where I'm coming from. So I'm looking at the brain being plastic, that the way we relate to our body and the way we relate to the world actually changes the biochemical nature of the neuroscience and what we're experiencing. And if I was to simplify that a little bit, if someone's really threatened by their tinnitus and feels as though it's dangerous, going to kill them, we're super worried about it, hate it, very annoyed by it, all of that emotional loading that's triggered by the tinnitus itself changes the way the neural pathways respond in the body. They end up getting much more fear response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and perpetuation of the actual signal. And they get higher neurological load. They get more allocated resource, because from that just survival point of view, if the body thinks that's a life-threatening signal, it will do everything to get to know it, to stop it, to problem solve it. So it actually exacerbates the neurological inputs. And then if you look at somebody, and I have seen these people who might have their tinnitus sounds and they just think it's the best thing ever. It's a message from God, you know, they might be Indian or something, and they just think, oh, can't believe I've got these sounds coming to me. I'm blessed, I'm enlightened. They have a completely different biochemical neurological response, because the emotional loading is one of awe and blessing and welcome. So they're not getting any fear response. So that actually changes how it's encoded. So the way we relate to the sounds themselves changes the biochemistry. And then what you guys are working with is the external stuff. So what's in the external world that could be aggravating the neurology? What's in the and that can be relationships, that can be the physical environment, sensory overload, lots of things. And so I help people navigate the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual layers of what's going on with their neurology. What are my symptoms telling me? Why is my body giving me this signal? You know, why won't the body sort of resolve that neural pattern? So a lot of it's about recalibrating, reorganizing, and sense making. If what I sense and feel in my body makes sense to me, I experience inner peace, essentially. If what I sense and feel in my body doesn't make sense and worries me, or I hate it, or I'm worried, or I'm super concerned about it, then I start to feel abnormal and sick, and the goose chase happens. So a lot of it's about sense making. But I might pause there and just check in with everyone listening. Do you have any specific questions at all, comments, insights, and then we can gauge how you want to travel today together?
Sounds great. That is so interesting already. Does anybody have any questions? Just take the microphone off and
it's while you're thinking about your questions, like it's 9 in 10 people hear tinnitus. So it's normal healthy body sounds. Not everyone has psychological disturbance about it. So the people who come to us are psychologically disturbed by it. So usually the tinnitus is the smoke, not the fire. There's something else going on in their body, in their life, that's aggravating this anxiety and this feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness. And the tinnitus is almost like a distraction. It's not usually the tinnitus that is the problem. So in most of the time for my clients, it's really their relationship to themselves and their trust in their own body. And my role is to help people come home into their body, doing lots of body scanning and self-compassion and kindness, all of this relational work, helping them to re-inhabit their body and feel at home in their body and eventually make sense of their own situation and felt sense. So it's super, super common. But the psychological distress is more what we're talking about.
Does anybody have clients that they've had with these issues?
Yeah, I've been getting quite a few. I think they're coming from referrals from all of Nicole's talks to the various integrative physician societies. And these patients are often very sick, have a list of symptoms half a page long, a lot of sensitivities, a lot of stress associated with it. So they're already in that sick, stressed situation, and tinnitus is usually one part of that. And it goes from vague tinnitus that's always there to very specific. I can hear when a phone is about to send me a message before it gets to my phone. Like
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, that the relationship stuff to the body really goes hand in hand with autoimmune conditions. Because when we're not comfortable in our body and there's this constant internal anxiety and shaming and I'm wrong and I'm bad and the internal dialogue and relationship to self is constantly circling back to some level of fear, like I'm not safe, I don't belong, I'm not loved, I don't like who I am, I don't like my body, I don't trust my body. All of that really does feed into a lot of those classic autoimmune conditions. They cluster. Someone put in the chat box, is it related to damage in the ear? It can be, but usually you'd expect the tinnitus to resolve within 6 weeks. So if there's physical architectural damage to any part of the ear, you can get temporary tinnitus, but we expect the body to just naturally habituate. It's only if there's that emotional loading and psychological distress that hooks in that it sticks around. And like, for example, not everybody with hearing loss has tinnitus. So hearing loss does not equal tinnitus. They're independent. Is your approach similar to TMS? What's TMS? Can you remind me?
I don't know if Caroline.
Sorry,
Oh,
I just,
yeah.
sorry, I just turned my mic back on.
Yeah.
The work by John Sarno, the tension, I never remember what the other word is, myositis syndrome, mind-body syndrome.
I've never heard of it, so I don't know. But I think anyone who has a level of intuitive understanding about the complex systems within the body and the mind-body integration, there's got to be a lot of overlap. Yeah, because I mean, essentially I help people to be in their body again in whatever way works for them. So they've got this chronic invisible symptoms that are looping and debilitating and destroying their lives. So part of it is I need to help them build their window of tolerance to stay in their body and actually be present while they've got discomfort. So that's part of the work. So that's the kind of polyvagal theory stuff. And part of it's actually getting them to reassess themselves. What lights them up? Where do they find pleasure? What do they enjoy? What kind of relationships do they want to build? What community, creativity? So then looking at the neural pathways that they want to build. So we call that their desired sensations. It could be they want to feel grounded, they want to feel centered, they want to feel joyful. Part of their daily practice in using neuroplasticity is actually building the new neural pathways that they want to strengthen to quote unquote make louder. So they need to learn how to recraft their life. If I give like a really solid example, if someone's feeling really lonely and isolated, but they seek connection, rather than just being at home all day, swamped by their tinnitus, stuck on the couch and feeling isolated and lonely, yes, they need to be able to sit in their body and spend some time there, but that's not all of it. We also want them to find ways to access connection. Is it writing a letter to a friend? Is it sending text messages? Is it going on a walk with a neighbor? So actually implementing like lifestyle changes or daily changes that break some of the neural patterns, but they're very much crafted by the client themselves. So I'm not prescribing anything. I'm helping them massage their neural mapping so that what they desire to feel, which in and of itself is a process to figure that out. A lot of people have no idea. They get clear on what they desire to feel more often, what they want to feel, and then they have to trial and error how to build those neural allocations so they're actually getting more access to those felt sensations in their body. It's a neural signal that they're learning to condition and fire. And so as those signals get louder, for example, feeling connected, actually the tinnitus ones get softer because you've only got so much neural activity at one time. So when you increase your focus over here on feeling connected and grounded, you actually decrease the fear and isolation. So it's kind of like a seesaw. So they learn how to manipulate their inners a little bit.
Yeah, there's a couple of new questions there.
For at least the last 10 years, I can feel and hear low frequency. Would your program be beneficial for me? Low frequency noise makes me feel very ill. Hi, Carola. Well, in essence, yes. Like the program I work with, it started off literally, I built it almost 10 years ago now, or no, it was 10 years ago. I built it because I was at the University of Melbourne and the Eye and Ear Hospital with all the elite doctors, people flying in from all over the country, the cream of the crop in tinnitus and vertigo. And I just saw people falling through the cracks, that the mainstream system wasn't quite able to get these people that didn't quite have classic medical, they didn't need a tumor removal, you know, they didn't have medical linear issues, they had non-linear problems. And I was seeing all these patterns. And so I left that system and built this online education resource to help people understand that your body can change. Neuroplasticity and synapses are dynamic. Like, we can participate in how we map the body, but we have to get to know who we are, what we're feeling and sensing. So we can't use neuroplasticity if we fight, flight, freeze. We have to be in our body and present, participating. Anyway, so it started like that. But people came into my program and would say, oh, my arthritis got better. Oh, my bladder problem healed. Oh, my insomnia. So it's not so much about vertigo and tinnitus. It's really any uncomfortable sensation in the body that is driving us crazy. We can learn how to come back into the body and remap that and change our relationship to the body. So yeah, we get these incredible skills of really harnessing our concentration, our attention, our relationship to self, but also just, I think, stepping back, taking stock and understanding that there are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual layers to life. And every part of that, so by spiritual, I really mean connection, values, beliefs, connection to self, connection to the outer world or anything greater. All of that actually changes our neural mapping. Like, my belief in myself changes how I map neurologically. If I have no belief in myself and I don't trust my body and I'm looking outside of myself for all the answers, whether that be a partner or doctors or God or whatever, that actually really changes the locus of control and the neurology. So at every level, our emotional sensitivities change how our body is reactive and physiologically working, and our mental thoughts also, everything's interconnected. Our thoughts can contribute to the emotions, our beliefs contribute to the emotions and thoughts, and all of that feeds into the physiology and the physical manifestation of what muscles clenching and, you know, what glands secreting what. So we've got this physical, mental, emotional, spiritual package, and my program really invites people to sit back and learn how to harness it. So my answer would be yes. You know, it helps us get to know ourselves. I actually used all of these skills for birthing my kids and moving through pregnancy, and I had really deeply beautiful experiences because I understood my body so deeply. The next one says, and let me know if I've answered that adequately or if there's more. Do you find some people use their tinnitus as a tool to avoid physiologically damaging exposures, such as radio frequency exposure? I've found, along with some of my clients, that taking note of where tinnitus occurs and doesn't, that we feel better in areas that no tinnitus occurs. And usually this is where I get very low readings on EMF meters. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of what I was talking about with Richard. I wasn't, like, from my training, there wasn't really much talk about EMF and tinnitus, but I absolutely am. I'm highly sensitive myself, very, very, very aware of what's entering my body, and the subtle. So I believe for different people, like, this is something for them to be aware of. And I would just believe people and trust people, I think, would be the approach I would take. So I'm not 100% sure on your question, but I don't suggest anyone avoid anything. So let's say there is some area with the EMF or radio frequencies. I would be saying to people, just understand what day you've had, you know, moderate your inputs. It's like going to a rock concert or a loud cafe. You don't have to avoid them. But if you know that that level of sensory loading aggravates your neurological system, that it's too much, you know, maybe make sure you've had a really good sleep, or, you know, you're really prepared for it and you've got all your body scanning tools and all of that, so that you can dip into it. You can have your coffee with your friends, you can go out and be in the world, but then you understand when it's also really wise to pull back, to not flood the system and get too much physiological stimulation. So it's never going to be black and white. It's dynamic. Each day is different. And some days people may choose to not go to the supermarket or not expose themselves. And other days they might think, yeah, I'm ready for this. I want to go. And they have a plan to gently pace themselves with all of that sensory loading or EMF loading or whatever the known sensitivity is. So I hope that answered your question, but I would err on the side of giving the power back to the person, saying, you know your body, trust your body. And what we really need to do is to physiologically support the body to be robust, to be resilient, to have capacity. If every single day we're burning out and exhausted because we're working long hours, we're talking to lots of people, we're giving our power away, we're prioritizing everybody else, we actually just drain ourselves of our life force, and we can't think, we can't concentrate, we're emotional, we're tired, we're crabby, everything's harder. So it's all about know yourself. Know how to nurture and nourish yourself, know how to rest yourself, understand your nervous system, and then everything gets easier and we can be more robust. Caroline said, I'm a bit curious if you think perimenopause and menopause can set off vertigo and tinnitus. Yes, absolutely. Or if it's just a coincidence that it seems to appear for some people. Yeah, hormones, hormones are moving through the body and absolutely changing how we sense and feel and what we sense and feel. But the other thing is perimenopause and menopause are sometimes referred to as a rite of passage that's like a reality slap. So in our younger years, through our 20s, 30s, and 40s, we may have a battery charge reserve. That means we can push through, we can ignore ourselves a bit, we can taxi the kids, we can cook and clean and work, and we can multitask, and we've got that energy reserve bolstering us. We've got that underlying strength and life force. But as we start to get into our wiser years, the body's like, I'm not doing that anymore. No way. I'm not a taxi driver. I'm not cooking for everyone. And the body starts to prioritize and say, stop putting everybody else first. Listen to me. I'm tired of accumulating stress patterns. I'm tired of accumulating tensions. I need to digest my life. I need to metabolize my life. So I see this quite a lot, actually. People are like, I'm fine. I never get sick, blah, blah, blah. And then they get this onset of vertigo and tinnitus or migraines. And it really is like their body has said, I am tired of storing all of this undigested life. When it's time for us to stop and process. And they have to go through a huge decluttering process of releasing all the stories and tensions and emotional backlog of life that the body's holding on to. And it's reversible, and they move through it. And many people go through this process and come out the other side feeling much clearer, much taller, much softer. They know themselves better. So I don't think it's a bad thing that it happens, but that's kind of classically the menopause story, that we have to stop, think about ourselves from that integrative point of view, the holistic, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And for some people, the vertigo and tinnitus will be some of those somatic markers that really, really give the slap in the face and make people pause life more seriously. Corolla says, thank you. I'll try the 7-day program and give it a try. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
I think we all should.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed my life, honestly. I'm quite neurodivergent, which just means my brain and body are wired in very, very intense and sensitive ways. I never knew that about myself, but that's why I built the program, because I struggle so much in daily life to do things that are easy for other people. I've got all this sensory loading and moderating, and I need a lot of like quiet meditation time to digest my day. And crowds and groups are quite difficult for me, even lots of screen time. So I'm very well practiced at understanding myself and nurturing and nourishing those differences. So for me, really now it is an absolute way of life. But now when I look back in hindsight, it's like, oh, that's why I built the program. I was falling apart. I needed to, so they're really, really wonderful skills, definitely, for all of us. And some of us need it more than others.
Well, yeah, this is good for our clients as well, because what I find with clients is, the home is the biggest investment. So if they're near a tower or something that's external to them that they can't control somehow, like even a lot of the things is, oh, my husband won't turn the Wi-Fi off, things like that. They ever get divorced or, this is a great program for this, because they can learn to deal with it in, in other ways rather than that stresses people out so much.
Yeah, and often we're putting our energy in the wrong place. Because oftentimes it is that thing of actually some parts of life we can't control and we have to surrender. So we have to learn how to surrender and we have to learn how to take that energy, and rather than trying to get people to turn the Wi-Fi off or change the pole, you know, or buy a new house and all these things that are really out of reach financially, how can we, and this is the new book I'm writing, is called Invisible Medicine, which is really talking about how do we digest the invisible inputs that we're swimming in. You know, thoughts, judgments, ideas, narrative, politics, it's all coming in and it's actually held in the body. How are we excreting it from the body? We've got all this invisible, unseen tension patterns, and it's really all relational. So how do we redirect our attention into the body, process the warm data, the neurological information that's moving through the body, make sense of the day we've just had to digest it, and actually excrete what we don't need in our body anymore. And I'm sure some of these people with the high sensitivities don't understand how to excrete. So they're actually accumulating all of these tension patterns. So rather than try and change the outside world, how about decluttering the inner world and creating more of that spaciousness, so there's the robustness and the resilience. So those daily decluttering patterns are really essential for people like me who are high sensitive. There was a question in there, making sense. When people experience vertigo, is this always because the crystals come loose? No, there's many different types of vertigo. BPPV, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, is the one where the otoconia calcium crystals come loose. And about 1 in 4 people experience that, and you can treat it in 5 minutes. It's so easy to treat and reverse almost instantly. So that one's not a problem. The vertigo that is more of an issue is what I'm talking about, where it's these neurological loops that don't stop, and often they're kind of like a PTSD or a complex trauma where the sensation itself is freaking a person out. So you get this self-perpetuated trauma loop where they're actually traumatized by their own bodily sensations. So I have to help them learn how to be in their body and re-normalize what they're sensing and feeling so that the brain unhooks from that fear response. And that's the Rocksteady program, which is, there's an online program that's beyond the book. And there's vestibular migraine too, which is relatively common, which is a migraine that can be silent, which means no headache, but they get spotting, dotting, auras, and vertigo and vomiting, and you know, sensitive, and that often goes hand in hand with menopause as well. Interesting that some scientific studies have come up between neurodivergence and EMF, MCS sensitivity. It doesn't surprise me at all, because I mean, this is just my personal opinion now, but you know, I'm hyper aware of everything that's coming into my body and the fact that I actually need to digest it. And so, you know, I'm very aware of what, if I ever choose to watch TV or movies, like it's pretty rare that I choose to watch a movie. That's my kids. Because of the digestion. And I now realize that I think what's going on is people are just absolutely bombarded. They're bombarded by daily life, and they're not recognizing that they're actually taking in a lot of data that their body has to digest. And it's just this clutter and physiological loading. So yeah, raising awareness about what's coming in and what's coming out. We can't change the way we're wired. We can't change the way. I'm just working at the minute. You're gonna have to stay with Daddy. I'll move to the office. They woke up. But yeah, just coming back to that, control what we can, and what we can control is moderating our inputs and also understanding how to work with our own physiology and our own nervous system. And I can tell you, if I lose myself and lose my practices and don't get my alone time, or you know, I'm thrust, let's say, into somebody else's rhythm, and I'm in lots of groups or lots of meetings or lots of screen time, and it's somewhat out of my control, or I don't self-advocate, I will become a mess. Like it really genuinely upsets my physical body. So it does make sense to me that there's this link between the neurodivergent way of being in the world and the fact that it's an environment person mismatch, that not all neurodivergent people match a mainstream world. So the body is just getting slammed with physiological distresses all the time. Yeah. I've also watched some of my clients go from irritable and upset, stressed to calm and happy within minutes of switching off their Wi-Fi. Yeah, and if that works for them, you know what, even if it's a placebo and it's just the relation that when it's turned off, the whole brain goes, oh my God, that's better now. If that works for them, that works for them. So again, it's sort of like believe them, encourage them. I try and give people that power to choose how they use their life. But I will always suggest that they shift their relationship to the Wi-Fi to be more friendly, to be more neutral. So rather than being very anti or avoidant, I will always try and invite them to befriend the stimulus. Yeah, Meniere's, do you want me to talk about that? Meniere's is less common. It's usually only in one ear. And Meniere's is when there's hydrolymphatic sac, there's endolymph fluid in the inner ear, and for whatever reason, we don't know why, the body creates too much of this fluid and it balloons open and swells and bursts, and it creates some architectural damage in the ear, usually some hearing loss and a temporary, very, very severe vertigo, like the kind of vertigo that you think you're dying, like it's really scary. And then after that, it takes about 6 weeks for all the membranes to close over and for them to slowly build up their strength and get their balance back. But after the attack, they should return to normal balance. They may have permanent hearing loss and they may get tinnitus, and they're likely to have a bit of trauma from the whole experience because it's unpleasant, but they can work through that and regain their balance and everything. In the old days, a lot of people were told they had Meniere's when they didn't. It was just, in the old days, it was like, well, you've got BBBV or Meniere's and that was it. But these days, it's not diagnosed as much. Yeah. Any other, I'm kind of curious how you work with these people, and what's your approach when you have someone who's like super anti-Wi-Fi or something and has to work with Wi-Fi? What are you doing to support them?
That's a really good question, because I think a lot of clients do get stressed out with recommendations and what we find, etc. But I mean, we will always recommend to be the best case scenario to get hardwired and at least turn the Wi-Fi off when not in use. Otherwise, yeah, there's other things they can do. It's just hard with what we do, because I mean, we've got the meters showing on and off. It's an environmental health hazard that's got a lot of scientific literature to back up that it is harmful.
Yeah. Is it the mobile phones too, or just specifically Wi-Fi?
Mobile phones, the devices as well.
Yeah.
They're speaking. Yeah.
Because some people
sorry, I just wanted to say there was a case in Melbourne where both the husband and wife both had developed Meniere's disease, which is quite unusual for the two people. And it turned out, after doing so much investigation, it was actually they were direct line of sight to a mobile phone tower, and they ended up moving house because it was only when they were in the house that it was at its worst. So there's times where, you know, it's interesting, how do we deal with it? For a lot of people, it is avoidance, and when they're avoiding it, then they feel better, so that then they can heal and they can sleep, or they, you know, improve their resilience. But it is something that for some people it's avoiding it until they, you know, or they feel better when they're away from the house, or they feel better when they're away from a shopping centre. So interesting of how much overload. I've also had people have gone down the track of having the audiology testing, and they've actually come back that they hear really high frequencies, like a dog whistle almost, that the normal person doesn't. So how does that sort of work in if it is an actual audiology confirmed high frequency hearing?
Well, it's safe to hear sound. So, I mean, that's just the way they're born. But again, it's possibly more that sensory loading
Mhm.
that the brain's taking into too much information. So it's just a lot to juggle. It's like trying to work and like me out there with my kids. It's like trying to maintain a conversation when there's all this distracting stuff. And so people with high sensitivities in daily life have all this disco juggling of sensory input, and they're trying to do their job or have their kids, and it's just
Mhm.
it's literally
Overload.
just yeah. Or the other sort of analogy or metaphor is, you've got all these tabs open on your computer or your phone, and it's just turn some tabs down, like simplify, just let the brain work at one or two things at a time. And as far as the avoidance go, I mean, even me, like I suffered, I mean, I didn't really know it at the time, but in hindsight, it killed me living in Melbourne. It was just too stimulating. I could just do my work and then I'd go home and crash out. And so I really needed to be closer to nature. And so moving to the coast and having more access to long stretches of beaches, and that's made a really big difference to my brain and my capacity to recharge myself. So I think avoidance it's a tricky thing, but we also have to be honest about what matches me as that person environment fit and where am I most going to thrive. And so for some people that may actually be leaving the city. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think that's all part of our individuation process of figuring out, well, who am I? If I'm not just being who I'm told to be and living where I'm told I should live and working where I'm told I should work, what if I actually stop and make choices based on how my body feels? And so it's that, again, it's that whole sovereignty, autonomy, self-permission. But yeah, I mean, mobile phones, Wi-Fi, it's everywhere, isn't it?
It is, and we can still avoid it most of the time. A lot of people can. And yeah, I think working with our clients, it's a level of how sick they are. And as our professional opinion, that's what they're getting us there for, environmental health hazards. But yeah, I layer it out sometimes and be like, think about when you're using it, turn it off when not in use until you can get hardwired. Like that's always going to be the answer. And like in a moldy building, a lot of people can't heal if they're still in the same environment. So
Yeah.
then we have other band-aid solutions like air purifiers to make the air better. But I think this would go very well hand in hand with what we do, because a lot of people need help when they've seen a building biologist with the emotional side of things. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so would you be saying like turn your mobiles off at home if you're not using it, as well as turn the Wi-Fi off if you need it at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't have Wi-Fi in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it because we don't have to have Wi-Fi in this day and age. It's almost like, the trauma response when people are becoming so overwhelmed, it's almost acknowledging that they're the overwhelm, but then giving them the tools so that they can actually work out, you can control this. So in your home, it's like, you control what comes into your house. So whether it's, if you've got pets and they've got dirty feet, you can wipe them at the front door. If your kids have got allergies, you can, decrease the exposure. So I find a lot of the clients I deal with have usually been hypersensitive for so many years or have been doctor to doctor for years and years. And to have someone come in, whether it's with our meters or our testing, they actually we've validated that there is an issue.
That's
so
beautiful.
Then we put into place removing those issues, or what are the solutions, rather than focusing on the problem, we're focusing on the solutions. And that just helps people. If it means that they can sleep by ensuring that they're, we've moved them away from the smart meter in their bedrooms, or, made it a no whatever zone that they're reacting to, it makes a huge difference.
And the opposite of trauma is choice. To have power, to have choice, to have autonomy. That's all part of their trauma healing too. So it's really, really important. And to be believed and validated is massive.
Yeah, there's a lot of tears from our clients when they get when they get that validation and understanding.
And then it's really hard because some of them are very stuck. They're either stuck in a rental, and the rental market's difficult to either get the problem fixed. I've had clients who move from one bad rental to another bad rental.
That's hard.
Yeah. So you sort of think, why is it happening to them? There's lots of issues there with that trauma response, and just not having the resilience or the toolkit that gives them the ways of handling things.
And it's in those situations where really, they have to go to work, they have to earn money, they can't just pick up, and that's where I would really encourage them to be coming into their body, learning to really strengthen and trust what they have going in here, and shifting their relationship to the Wi-Fi and whatever. So it's like I've got some clients who are given medications that they don't want to take. And I might say to them, look, if that medication is literally important for you to take, there's a reason, rather than have that fear response and sort of, you're almost rejecting the medicine before it's in your mouth, why not just visualize, imagine that it's a little army of soldiers that's going in to help your body. It's going in to help your muscles, and it's going in to help your blood flow. It's going, and just getting that psychological shift and emotional shift can make all the difference. So shifting the relationship to whatever that input is, so there's more of that emotional coherence. So again, just coming back to controlling what we can and surrendering what we can't. But that's huge. And so with reducing Wi-Fi altogether, would they just contact the company to come and hardwire it into the house something and then plug their computer in? How does it even work?
Same as it used to, the Ethernet cords.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the same as, the olden days. What was that, 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Yeah, great.
Well, yeah, Dave said they would get someone like him who is a licensed data cabler, which is, we do better to recommend to people that are licensed and good at what they do, because it can be more confusing. And a lot of electricians, if you just do a random, will be try and talk them out of hardwiring. So we've got to be careful.
Yeah, great. That's good to know. Is there anything else that I haven't covered that you want me to cover? I mean, I think for me anyway, the longer I've been doing this work, I think it all comes down to people need to make sense of what they're feeling. And if people understand, oh, okay, I've had a really busy day, I've been really flooded with sensory inputs, I've had a lot of emotion over here, I'm juggling a lot there, my brain's fried, so it makes sense that I feel crap. They actually feel better about it because it makes sense. And then as Bronwyn said, then they can start to have strategies about actually doing something about those various layers of life that are overwhelming. So yeah, the sense making, I think, is really, really what it all comes down to. And understanding that we're complex systems, like human beings, we're very complex, living in a complex world. It's non-linear. So moving away from all of these linear goose chasing magic pills and expert fixes or quick fixes, it's more of a slow and steady trial and error self-inquiry from my point of view. Caroline said, can you let us know a little bit about how your program runs? So my Rocksteady online program, the 7-day program, is just a really beautiful introduction to neuroplasticity and getting people to body scan and get curious about their sensory mapping. So that's a lovely introduction, but the Rocksteady program is quite comprehensive. It's $2,800. We have lots of scholarships for people who need financial support, and it's global. So I've got people from UK, Finland, South Africa, Hong Kong, North and South America, all over. They go through 6 modules of learning, and a lot of it is about teaching them to slow down, body scan, and get curious about what's going on in their body. At the very dense, there's a lot of the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual sort of suggestions and inquiries. And I teach people how to craft their own neuroplasticity way of life. So they don't do a rigid, prescribed daily practice. They actually design their own neural maps based on what they want to feel. And they learn to soothe and be with what they're actually feeling, so they don't have to run away from themselves. So aside from the 6 modules, there's just lots and lots of call replays. Like I want to say we might have almost 100 call replays now, where there's peer group support, people asking questions, listening, troubleshooting, sharing their challenges. So there's this huge sense of community belonging, which, similar to what Bronwyn said, is massive, because they suddenly feel understood, they feel seen, they feel validated, they feel reassured. And then I run and host 2 live group calls a month where they can bring their Q&A, or we share about a theme or a topic. And I also do a grief and soul tending circle once a month where people come in and we sit together. We go through a grief ritual and we take all the masks off, be vulnerable, and we share grief and pain and sorrows and how to declutter and release from the body. So that's entering the, I suppose, the spiritual groundwork of when I'm holding so much tension, I can't really build new neural maps. I actually need to start to release, soften, create space so that then I can get the new neural maps growing. So it's a really supportive community. And once they have the program, they have it for life. So some of my clients have had it for 3, 4, 5 years and they are still participating and they're still active, even though they've got no symptoms anymore. It just becomes a real community. Did that answer enough of your question? But yeah, it's all self-paced, They do audios, videos, PDFs, and then they touch base with me in those live group calls twice a month. Yeah, it's a beautiful community. I'm really proud of it, and I get a lot out of it too.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Is there any questions?
Can you explain to me just briefly what your measuring things are doing? Are you measuring the EMF or yeah?
Go on, Dave.
Yeah, my measuring things. I've got a few of them. So AC magnetic fields and radio frequency fields are the two big things that we mostly focus on because we've got the most science on them. And dirty electricity is the next thing, which is like some groups call it the intermediate frequency because it's between low and high radio frequency. There is emerging science on that and has been for the past couple of decades. AC electric fields, there's a bit of science on that, and it could be maybe as serious as other fields, but I do take measurements on that now, but not everybody does. And if you're not careful with the way you take measurements of it, then meaning that the measurements are basically meaningless. Same with body voltage. I also consult the databases such as the RFNSA and the ACMA who issue licenses. I've just had a client last week who just here on the South Coast a couple of weeks ago could no longer walk into their bedroom. It's upstairs in a townhouse. And I'm like, okay, I've come across something like that before, and it's outside of the range of my meters because they stop at 10 gigahertz, and this is a microwave point-to-point link. And walking into that area, I immediately got screaming tinnitus, felt like I was going to fall over. And I'm like, okay, I've come across this before. This feels like a microwave point-to-point link, and I trust that this would probably be above the range of my meters. But I was trying not to drop while I was getting seriously dizzy. And yeah, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just really quickly take some very quick measurements and get the hell out of here. And later consulted the ACMA database, and sure enough, a microwave link had been put there and up on a mountain that way, pointing back towards my client in
Wow.
6 weeks or so. And it was about 15 gigahertz, and that's, just above the range of my meters. So just trying to figure out what to do about that, because this is sort of newish. There is no real prescribed method of what to do in this space as far as we go. So, and being highly sensitive myself, exposing myself to these sorts of fields is probably not wise, but as my client said, geez, you're in the trenches, aren't you? And yes, I guess I am. So yeah, I guess I used my measuring things to try to validate what my clients are going through and try my best to assist them with the science that I understand, and being sensitive myself, often I'm feeling the same things in the same space that they are. And that gives them some comfort to, first off, reject any notions that they may be crazy or
Yeah.
imagining it, because
That's
they're
true.
watching somebody in front of them going through the same thing.
Mm.
And yeah, somebody who has an understanding of maybe how they might be able to live in their space more safely and not be exposed. And
Do we know if it has any cellular impact?
yes, there are quite a number of studies and have been since the 1960s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, particularly with the voltage gated calcium channels, that's a big thing that's emerged. Yeah.
Amazing.
So,
Well, that would
yeah.
be interesting. I hope something can be done.
Yeah. Anyone else who wants to talk about their measury things?
Yes. I second you. Yes. That's what we do.
That's great.
Yeah, and there is a lot of research as well to back it up. And just feeling, and we talk about placebo and things like that, but I know people, and myself included, that if the Wi-Fi is turned on somehow, like, and that's why then I will take my meter and go and find what it is. Like, and it's like I've done that so many times, and I know other people too.
Yeah, I reckon I can feel it. I can feel when I need to switch off and get away.
Yeah. No, that was amazing though. It's so interesting, and it's so important for people to be feeling strong and not give in to it.
Yeah. And really just have that sense of empowerment that we understand our body, we trust our body, and we're not constantly externalizing and always looking for some external expert or device or pill. Actually, I know my body. I know how to care for my body, nourish my body, rest my body, rejuvenate my body. And, if it can be as simple as turning the Wi-Fi off at night, or all those little tricks, gives them their power back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there any other questions before we leave? I think there might be a couple doing your program as well. So
Yeah, so seekingbalance.com.au, that's where you'll find me. I've got a podcast and a YouTube channel and all that. So
excellent. That was great. Thank you so much.
it's
Thanks
a
for joining
pleasure.
us, everyone.
Nice to meet you all. It's great work. Thanks, Richard, for letting me know about it.
I'm sure we'll all be in
Yeah,
touch.
thanks, Joey.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll follow up with you with a few good lectures to watch.
Oh, good. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.